That includes space launch centers, the headquarters of the U.S. Southern Command, plus naval and Air Force bases. U.S. intelligence says Beijing has been looking for a military installation in Cuba. And according to former U.S. intelligence officials, access to a spy facility in Cuba could make Beijing better able to identify targets to strike in the U.S. in the event of a conflict. One previously uncovered listening post is located near El Salao, Cuba. CSIS found that construction on it started in 2021. Once complete, it could be used to monitor communications from a U.S. naval base at Guantanamo Bay, just 70 miles away. Getting access to this outpost would be a major boost for Chinese spying efforts. Zooming in, images reveal a control building as well as foundations for 16 vertical antennas around it. Cuba has a history of hosting espionage operations against the U.S. The Soviets built a spy base in Cuba during the Cold War. Putin shut down the facility in the early 2000s. The communist country is embroiled in an economic crisis. Beijing has been providing assistance to Cuba and agreed to forgive some of its debt. Joining us now to discuss the suspected Chinese spy bases in Cuba is retired Brigadier General Robert Spalding. He's also a national security analyst and author of Stealth War and War Without Rules. General Spalding, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Thanks. Great to be back.
Now, a new report from the Wall Street Journal says that satellite images show suspected Chinese spy bases in Cuba are expanding. How concerning is this?
Well, it's very concerning. In fact, when people used to ask me what I thought might be a preemptive maneuver vis-a-vis a war in Taiwan, I thought, it is highly possible that we could see something perhaps emanating from Cuba, some kind of disruption. So I do believe that China, just in the case of China's military is beginning to expand where it goes. But more importantly, I think it does create a foothold in a very close space away from the United States that could potentially be used to create a distraction in the event of a Taiwan invasion. So, it's very reminiscent, in fact, of the first Cold War, because if you remember, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. So I'm not surprised at all that we're starting to see the Chinese, enhance a sub base in Cuba.
Expanding on that, a White House official said that Beijing has been spying on the U.S. from Cuba since at least 2019. Now, given that, what kind of information can Beijing get from there?
Well, a lot of what they're doing is whatever the Atlantic Fleet is doing, and so it's a good opportunity for them to look at Atlantic Fleet operations and really understand Navy tactics, techniques, and procedures. A lot of intercepts of military communications is primarily what they would be looking to do.
Now, to your earlier point, given the tensions we are seeing between the U.S. and China, how does what's happening in Cuba, fit into those potential military plans, especially an impending Taiwan invasion, perhaps? How does this fit in?
Well, I think it's part of the overall pattern of activity that you've seen from China. It's not just in Cuba. They're also increasing their aggressiveness around the Philippines in the South China Sea, and to include Taiwan. And then, of course, when you consider the fact that, the Russia's invasion of Ukraine and Iran, Hamas and Hezbollah, it's all kind of related to their relationship with China. And, the next thing that you can probably expect, you've already started to hear some things out of North Korea. Putin just visited. So I think you're going to start to see some things there. But it's overall pattern of activity that indicates that, we're getting deeper and deeper into the Cold War. And I think it's very important that we're focused, and we don't want that war to turn hot. So that means that we have to be on our game. Otherwise, the Chinese could be convinced that we're unable to, essentially respond. And that's the key concern that I have.
When it comes to these suspected spy bases in Cuba, what can the U.S. do to either counter this or make sure they're not getting that information?
Well, it just requires the forces that could be under surveillance to monitor the transmissions, monitor their activities, ensure that they're not giving away any of their operational secrets. And I think that just makes it more difficult for the Navy to exercise and prepare for whatever may happen in the Indo-Pacific in China's backyard.
General Spalding, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
The Treasury Department is zeroing in on fentanyl trafficking. Its goal is to hit the flow of money supporting the illegal trade. To do it, the department is sanctioning 2 Chinese men for allegedly laundering money for the infamous Sinaloa drug cartel. Let's dive in.
The U.S. Treasury Department sanctioned 2 Chinese and 1 Mexican national on Monday for allegedly laundering money for Sinaloa, the drug cartel that's largely responsible for the fentanyl crisis that has taken tens of thousands of American lives. One of the defendants, He Jingtong, allegedly went to Mexico 4 years ago to sign contracts to launder the cartel's drug money. The 2 Chinese defendants are still in China. Both are part of a Chinese money laundering organization based in the U.S. There have been a growing number of such groups in recent years. The Justice Department charged the 2 Chinese men along with 22 others in June. Some of the defendants are cartel associates, others are members of Chinese currency brokers. The DOJ accused them of laundering $50 million in drug profits.
Now we turn to southern China, where flooding, landslides, and rising river levels not seen for decades are wreaking havoc. Torrential rain has caused flooding and triggered landslides in southern China, threatening the lives of millions. In Hunan province, rivers have swelled to their highest water level in 7 decades. Local roads have turned into rivers, and boats have replaced cars for navigating the area. In one county, more than 340,000 residents were evacuated. Forecasters say the torrential rainfall is expected to ease on Wednesday in the middle and lower reaches of the Yangtze River. The U.S. and Panama have signed an immigration deal that aims to close the Darien Gap. The treacherous Jungle Passage connects Colombia and Panama and is a key route for migrants hoping to reach the U.S., including those from China. Panama's new president was sworn in on Monday. He said Panama will no longer be a transit country for illegal immigration. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the immigration deal.
Panama's new president, Jose Raul Molino, took office on Monday promising to curb illegal immigration.
I won't allow Panama to be an open path for thousands of people who enter our country illegally, supported by an international organization related to drug trafficking and human trafficking.
Molino's new foreign minister signed a memorandum of understanding with the U.S. after the address. The U.S. agreed to cover the cost of repatriating migrants who enter Panama illegally in the deal. The memorandum also says the U.S. would support Panama with equipment, transportation, and logistics to enforce immigration laws. Panama's government says the memorandum allows closing off illegal immigration through the Darien Gap. The mountainous rainforest region connects South and Central America and is a dangerous route for migrants hoping to reach the U.S. Panama's National Migration Service says more than 500,000 people crossed the corridor last year, most from Venezuela, Ecuador, Colombia, and China. This year, more than 190,000 people have already crossed. Molino also promised Monday to boost job and economic growth while addressing Panama's debt. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
The U.S. has revoked 8 licenses this year that allowed companies to sell products to Chinese telecom giant Huawei. According to a Reuters report citing the Commerce Department, these licenses included low-technology components widely available in China, such as touchpad and touchscreen sensors for tablets. Huawei made shockwaves across China last August after it rolled out a new phone powered by a semiconductor made by Chinese chipmaker SMIC. The product led to a sales boost, which was up a staggering 64% in the first 6 weeks of 2024. Both Huawei and SMIC were blacklisted by Washington, with officials citing concerns of espionage by the Chinese Communist Party. China-controlled electric car maker Polestar is looking to offset tariffs imposed by the U.S. and the European Union. The decision comes after the company reported an operating loss in the first quarter this year. Polestar spokesperson said the plan won't indicate job cuts, but it could trigger other moves like cost cuts across the supply chain. Owned by Chinese automaker Geely, the Swedish company electric vehicles in Chengdu, China. But going forward, Polestar's upcoming models will be manufactured in the U.S. and South Korea. Norway has arrested a citizen for allegedly spying for China. The person's identity has not been made public.
Media reports say the suspect is accused of serious intelligence activities involving state secrets. He denies being an agent for China. The suspect is scheduled for a court hearing today. Europe has been on alert about Chinese espionage activities. The British Foreign Ministry summoned the Chinese ambassador in May, saying Chinese espionage and cyber attacks are unacceptable. According to the head of British Intelligence and Security Agency, GCHQ, China poses an increasing cyber risk, and China is her agency's top priority. The remark comes after a major breach of a payment system used by the British Armed Forces. The UK suspects China is behind the hack. Beijing denies the accusation. Over in the US, Chinese hackers also targeted over 20 American pipeline operators. Officials warn the China threat is closing in.
Over $600 million worth of ecstasy drug precursors from China seized at an Italian airport Monday. The shipment weighs over 6 tons and contains enough material to produce over 60 million MDMA pills.
The Italian police said 2 Chinese nationals in the Netherlands and an Italian businessman in Milan is now under investigation. The shipment was destined for a company headquartered in Milan before heading to the Netherlands. Illegal Chinese drug shipments are also on U.S. watch lists. In April, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, seized over 1,000 pounds of drug precursors from China. The kind of powder that was found can be used to make methamphetamine and cocaine.
Coming up, free trade or unfair trade, the U.S. is taking measures to protect its automakers from Chinese competition. That says they contend with massive state subsidies from Beijing. Idaho Congressman Russ Fulcher hopes to level the playing ground.
We believe in not just free trade, but fair trade as well.
A critical material found in iPhones, computers, electric cars, and even weapons, rare earth metals are a hot spot in the U.S.-China tech race. Beijing now trying to tighten its grip on the critical supplies. Is the UK helping Chinese army grow stronger? New details show the UK sold equipment to China that could have military implications on top of its civilian selling points. More on that after the break here on China in Focus.
When I started MyPillow, it was just a problem. MyPillow sandals, $25. And for the first time ever, our 6-pack towel sets, you guessed it, just $25. Our brand new 4-pack dish towels, $25. And I've never done this before. Premium MyPillows with all new Giza fabric, any size, any loft level, even king size for only $25. And there's so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code for our $25 extravaganza. Order $75 and over. Your entire order ships absolutely free.
Hi, I'm Caleb, and this is my story. I was born with osteogenesis imperfecta or brittle bone disease. I have broken my bones almost 200 times, and I have had 11 surgeries. But I didn't let that stop me. I learned to bike ride, climb, race, and I'm learning how to stand and walk. But I can only do all of this because of generous people like you and Shriners Hospitals for Children.
Because of people like you, Shriners Hospitals for Children has helped more than 1.3 million kids just like me, regardless of their family's ability to pay.
Shriners Hospitals for Children is only able to provide this world-class, life-changing medical care because of the generous gifts of people just like you.
Because of you, I can ride my bike. I can play basketball.
Because of people like you, I can run.
I can smile.
Will you send your love to the rescue today?
When you go to loveshriners.org right now and give just 63 cents a day, you're helping kids just like me.
Like me. Like me. When you give today, we'll send you this adorable Love to the Rescue blanket as a thank you and a reminder of the love you gave to a kid just like me.
Your gift, no matter how small, can help a child today.
This is your moment to make a difference.
When you pick up your phone, sure you have it right there, and call to give. You're helping kids like me. Thank you. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Please call or go online now. If operators are busy, please call again or give right away at loveshriners.org.
Your gift makes a difference. Thank you for giving.
Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. U.S. and Chinese car makers are racing for the upper hand. On one hand, the Chinese Communist Party is subsidizing electric vehicle manufacturing. On the other, the U.S. is taking measures to protect its own automakers from unfair competition. At the same time, some electric car parts are imported to the U.S. from China. Idaho Congressman Russ Fulcher spoke with Steve Lance from NTT's Capital Report to discuss the national security concerns in the sector.
Congressman Russ Fulcher, thank you so much for joining.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on today.
Congressman, what did we learn in terms of supply chain issues back in COVID, and what type of national security risks does this pose, to your point, if all of the parts and accessories are actually coming from China?
Well, what we learned was that we are not nearly as supportive of our own domestic supply chain as we need to be. And that played out during COVID. This mandate on electric vehicles would just simply make it worse. Not only would it make put pressure on our power grid, but it would also necessitate the increase of the number of trucks. When you consider the weight of the batteries that come from China, it's the only place they can come from right now. The weight of that would reduce the amount of freight that you can haul with these trucks, which mandate, in essence, even more of them.
The CCP, they're experts when it comes to exploiting loopholes, whether it be circumventing, tariffs in a certain way or anything of the sort. Now, the USMCA allows vehicles assembled in Mexico to enter the U.S. with low or zero tariffs. How do you think the U.S. should address the potential loophole that could let these Chinese EVs exploit our trade rules?
Well, I think tariffs are an important component. I'm typically a free market type of person. However, when you have a government such as the Chinese government that subsidizes this industry, that basically makes it an unfair playing field for everyone else that is attempting to compete. And they are very good at finding the loopholes. But I do believe that tariffs, whether it be directly on imports from China or on Chinese products, regardless of where they come into the nation, that is going to be a factor until they can understand that in America, we believe in not just free trade, but fair trade as well. And so we can't just sit back and watch them take over this industry and have an undue influence on American commerce.
And lastly, Congressman, to your point, Chinese EV manufacturers benefit from substantial government subsidies, allowing them to sell at lower prices. How can the U.S. respond to this uneven playing field to ensure fair competition?
I actually had breakfast within the last couple of weeks with the CEO of Ford Motor Company, and he addressed this and pointed out just the tremendous infrastructure that China has when it comes to electric vehicles due to their subsidies. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I can tell you that the message generally was, if we as in government, we as in Congress, we as in the administration don't take steps to stop this pathway of inundation with Chinese electric vehicles, not just the American suppliers for this, but the European suppliers will be unable to compete as well. And this will have devastating impacts, not just on America, but on the rest of the world.
Congressman Russ Fulcher, really appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Zooming back out, China is tightening its control of rare earth metals processing. Beijing says the resources belong to the state. Beijing unveiled a list of new regulations over the weekend, all in the name of protecting its national security.
Yeah.
Chinese officials say they plan to set up a system to track the entire lifespan of rare earth metals, from mining to processing to the export of goods made with the materials. The new regulations will take effect in October. These critical materials are needed for a range of household products like iPhones, computers, and electric cars, plus virtually any electronic devices with microchips inside. Beyond that, the metals are an important part of the weapons industry and the production of military gear. China now produces 70% of all rare earth metals globally and refines nearly 90% of them. Western countries are trying to increase their own rare earth mining capacities outside China to reduce their dependence on the communist country. Next, we turn to Europe. A report says the UK's government authorized the sale of billions of dollars in military-related equipment to China. The details come from British newspaper The Independent after it examined figures from the UK's Department for Business and Trade. The equipment in question has both military and civil uses. It's up to the country that receives the equipment to decide how to use it. The newspaper reported the UK granted licenses for more than 100 different types of dual-use equipment. But the tricky part is, in 2022, the UK government imposed an arms embargo on China. The newspaper said China is not the only country involved with this issue, adding that figures show at least 5 other countries under arms embargoes also received dual-use equipment from the UK.
Many of these so-called private enterprises actually originated from the Chinese Communist Party's aerospace program. They started private enterprises, but kept on working for that aerospace program. Many so-called private aerospace companies are equipped with security personnel with official backgrounds of the Chinese Communist Party.
Analyst Nan Su said these so-called private companies get funding from Chinese authorities just like state-run enterprises, and their goal is to deceive Western countries in order to get their advanced technology. Alvaro Penas, international affairs analyst, told the Epoch Times that, quote, this can be dangerous because these things that the UK sold to China can end in the hands of the Russian army and be used to destroy Ukrainian cities and to kill Ukrainian people. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has said he is aware that China's communist regime poses a threat to the UK's open and democratic way of life. That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. For round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.